Imagine, if you will, a misty autumn evening in Zurich, back in the early 20th century, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke, and the lake reflects the fading light like a mirror to forgotten dreams. It's in this serene yet subtly unsettling backdrop that Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist whose mind delved into the shadowy depths of the human soul, encountered what he would later whisper to close confidants as his most harrowing case. A tale not just of madness, but of a profound, terrifying unraveling that challenged everything he believed about the psyche. This isn't some dry, clinical report tucked away in dusty archives. No, this is the story of Elias Hartmann, a man whose empathy was both his gift and his curse, a vessel overflowing with the world's unspoken pains until, one fateful day, it shattered beyond repair. As we journey through this narrative together, feel the chill creep up your spine, because what happened to Elias isn't just history. It's a warning etched into the very fabric of our subconscious, reminding us that even the kindest hearts can harbor storms capable of devouring everything in their path. Elias Hartmann was born in a quiet village nestled in the Swiss Alps, where the mountains stood like silent guardians, their peaks piercing the heavens as if trying to touch the divine. From a young age, he was different, not in the way that draws admiration or envy, but in a manner that isolates, that makes one feel like an outsider peering into lives that seem so blissfully unaware. His mother would recount how, as a toddler, Elias would weep uncontrollably when the neighbor's dog howled in pain, or how he'd clutch his chest during family arguments, as if the words were arrows piercing his own flesh. He wasn't just sensitive, he was an empath in the truest sense, absorbing the emotions of those around him like a sponge in a raging sea. By the time he reached manhood, Elias had learned to navigate this invisible torrent, channeling it into his work as a healer in the village, a herbalist and counselor who could sense the hidden ailments of the soul before a patient even spoke. People came from miles around, drawn to his gentle eyes that seemed to see straight through to their buried sorrows, and his voice, soft as the rustle of pine needles, that offered solace without judgment. But beneath that calm exterior, a pressure was building, year after year, as Elias took on the grief of widows, the rage of betrayed lovers, the despair of the destitute, never once allowing himself to release it, for fear that acknowledging his own pain would make him selfish, unworthy of his calling. It was in 1912, amid the gathering clouds of a world on the brink of war, that Elias's path crossed with Carl Jung's. Jung, then establishing his own theories after breaking from Freud, had heard whispers of this remarkable empath through mutual acquaintances in the medical circles of Zurich. Intrigued by the concept of the collective unconscious, the idea that we all share a reservoir of archetypal experiences buried deep within, Jung saw in Elias a living embodiment of what he termed the persona, clashing with the shadow. He invited Elias to his lakeside home for what was meant to be a series of consultations, a chance to explore how such profound empathy might connect to the universal human experience. Their first meeting unfolded in Jung's study, a room filled with the warm glow of lamplight, shelves groaning under the weight of ancient tomes on alchemy and mythology, and the faint aroma of pipe tobacco mingling with the crisp evening air wafting through an open window. Elias sat across from Jung, his hands folded neatly in his lap, but Jung noticed immediately the faint tremor, the way Elias's gaze flickered toward the shadows in the corners, as if sensing unseen presences. "Tell me," Jung began, his voice steady and probing, "how does it feel to carry the weight of so many souls?" Elias paused, his eyes distant, and then, In a whisper that carried the echo of 1,000 unspoken cries, he replied, "It feels like drowning in a river that never ends, Doctor. But I must keep swimming, for if I stop, who will pull the others to shore?" As the sessions progressed over the following months, Jung delved deeper into Elias's psyche, using techniques like active imagination and dream analysis to unearth the layers of repression that had built up like sediment in a forgotten well. Elias's dreams were vivid tapestries of horror and beauty, visions of vast oceans where he swam among schools of fish that morphed into human faces contorted in agony, or forests where trees whispered secrets of betrayal and loss. Jung interpreted these as manifestations of the shadow self, that dark counterpart to our conscious persona, the part we deny but which grows stronger in the denial. Elias, in his relentless empathy, had suppressed his own anger, his own desires, his own capacity for darkness, believing that to embrace them would taint his role as the village's beacon of light. Yet, with each session, cracks began to appear. Elias would arrive looking more haggard, his once gentle features etched with lines that spoke of sleepless nights. He'd recount episodes where the emotions of others overwhelmed him in public, a market vendor's quiet resentment exploding in his mind like thunder, or a child's innocent fear gripping his heart like icy fingers. Jung urged him to confront this shadow, to integrate it rather than fight it, but Elias resisted, his voice trembling with conviction. "If I let the darkness in, Doctor, it will consume me. And then, who will I be?" Little did either of them know that the dam was already fracturing and the floodwaters were rising, poised to unleash a terror that would haunt Jung for the rest of his days. The turning point came on a crisp October afternoon in 1913, a day that began with deceptive normalcy but would end in a maelstrom of psychological horror. Elias had been feeling particularly burdened that week. The war rumors swirling through Europe had amplified the collective anxiety, and as an empath, he absorbed it all like a conduit for the world's brewing storm. He arrived at Jung's home unannounced, his coat disheveled, his eyes wild with a desperation that Jung had never seen before. "I can't hold it anymore," Elias gasped as he collapsed into a chair, his hands clutching his head as if to contain the chaos within. Jung, sensing the urgency, cleared his schedule and began what he intended as a breakthrough session. They sat by the window overlooking the lake, where the water lapped gently against the shore, a stark contrast to the turmoil unfolding inside. As Elias spoke, his words poured out in a torrent, stories of absorbed pains that had festered, the soldier's guilt from a past conflict, the mother's grief over a lost child, the lover's burning jealousy. But then, something shifted. Elias's voice deepened, taking on tones that weren't his own, as if multiple souls were speaking through him. Jung leaned forward, fascinated yet uneasy, his notebook forgotten as he witnessed what seemed like a possession by the collective shadow. Suddenly, Elias's eyes glazed over, and he began to laugh. A low, guttural sound that echoed unnaturally in the room, sending a shiver through Jung's spine. "You think you can contain us?" Elias snarled. But it wasn't Elias anymore. His face twisted into expressions of rage, sorrow, and malice, cycling rapidly like masks in a fever dream. He rose from his chair, his movements jerky and unnatural, knocking over a lamp that shattered on the floor, plunging the room into flickering shadows. Jung, for the first time in his career, felt true fear. Not the intellectual curiosity of exploring the mind, but a primal dread that rooted him to his seat. Elias advanced, his hands outstretched as if to grasp Jung's throat, whispering accusations that cut to the core. "You've poked at the darkness, Doctor, but you never truly faced your own. Feel it now. the betrayal, the abandonment, the fury we've all buried. In that moment, the empath had snapped, his psyche fracturing under the weight, releasing not just his shadow, but fragments of every soul he'd ever touched, a psychic explosion that filled the air with an oppressive energy, as if the room itself were alive with malevolent whispers. Jung managed to call for help, his voice hoarse with terror, and assistants restrained Elias, who thrashed and screamed in languages he shouldn't have known, ancient tongues laced with curses and pleas. The aftermath was a blur of sedation and isolation. Elias was committed to a sanatorium where he lingered in a catatonic state for months, occasionally muttering prophecies that aligned eerily with the horrors of the impending world war. Jung, shaken to his core, documented the case in private journals, referring to it as the empath's apocalypse, a testament to the dangers of unintegrated shadows. He reflected deeply on how Elias's empathy, unchecked and unbalanced, had become a portal for the collective unconscious to erupt, a terrifying reminder that our minds are not isolated islands, but interconnected webs, capable of amplifying darkness if we ignore the warnings within. Years later, as Jung sat by that same lake, watching the sun set in a blaze of crimson, he pondered the lessons of that day. Elias eventually recovered enough to live quietly, but he was forever changed. A hollow shell, his empathy dulled to a whisper, as if the snap had cauterized the very essence of his gift. This case shaped Jung's theories profoundly, influencing his writings on the anima, the shadow, and the perils of repression. And so, dear viewer, as we draw this tale to a close, ask yourself, what shadows do you carry, absorbed from the world around you? What happens when the empath in all of us finally snaps? It's a question that lingers in the quiet moments, a subtle hook pulling you toward your own inner depths, where the true terrors and perhaps the greatest healings await.